Bitcoiners, hope you're doing well. Double B, there is no second best. No, there isn't. There isn't. B for victory. Bon matin. Good morning, Bitcoiners. Enjoy your Saturday. Indeed, you got to enjoy your Saturday, right? Good morning, good people. Indeed, P-Man. Let me just tell you that we got a maximum sunrise this morning. I sent a note for all of you who remember. For those of you who are new, you don't remember the old days when I first started. In order to let a crowd come in, I used to run the camera and turn it my way, but you'd see the sunrise, or at least you'd see something like a sunrise. So it used to be my, before we had AI to populate all the thumbnails, it used to just be pictures of the sunrise that I took every morning. So I offered one because it's almost been a year. The 28th is, so 5 days from now is the first day that I began doing this daily. I tried doing it daily the year before as an experiment to see if I could. Success, and then it was launched last year. So there you go, beautiful sunrise. And Bitcoin's running, right? So all that's left for us to do is have a coffee and talk about what's new. Indeed. Greg, good morning from and BTC team from sunny Florida. We watched the sunrise. We had our coffee. We're ready for our daily injection of financial, media, and energy literacy. Greg, that's what we do here. We do the literacy, right? We're all into the literacy. Top of the morning from South Florida. Thank you, King Mensa Musa. We got all kinds of people from Florida. Guten Tag. We love Florida. We are big Florida fans. All right. You're here for some Moscow time. I know it. I know it. Today's a good one. Today's a good one. Now, I need a fact check on the Associated Press for this first one. Right? I need a fact check. I thought that the court said Alex Jones owes 1.5 trillion. But 1.5 billion is a lot. I could have got it wrong. So here it is. Bankrupt conspiracy theorist Alex Jones hasn't paid a dime of the nearly $1.5 billion he owes Sandy Hook families for claiming the school shooting was a hoax. Yet he's spending tens of thousands of money on himself, including $93,000 in July. What a bad guy, right? He's a jerk. The Pentagon has exempted Ukraine operations from a potential government shutdown. The decision means that training on American tactics and equipment can move forward uninterrupted if lawmakers don't reach a funding deal by the end of the day, by the end of the month. So, it's like a little bit of war spending. They don't need oversight. They don't need oversight, right? They don't. Congress doesn't get to oversight that. Come on. No. Exempt. So this one's funny. It's not a headline, but this actually happened, right? We've got a little more information on the F-35. Do you know what the pilot did when he ejected out of the F-35? Has anyone heard what the pilot did? It's great. We get this from Colin Rugg. I'm not sure if it's true or not, but that's the beauty of Moscow time, right? So breaking. The 911 call has been released involving the pilot who was forced to eject from the F-35. That went missing. So apparently he ejects and he lands in his parachute and calls 911. Not kidding. I'm not kidding. Let me read what he says. In the 911 audio, the pilot could be heard explaining what had happened. He explained that he was flying at 2,000 feet and was forced to eject due to an aircraft failure. We need to get rescue rolling, he said. I'm not sure where the airplane is. It could have crash landed. I ejected. I was at 2,000 feet, an aircraft failure. And he also asked the dispatcher if he had heard any reports of an airplane crash. So he called them up, 911. I just ejected from an F-35. Whoa. By the way, have you noticed any airplanes, F-35s, that might have crashed? That really happened. So now we're going to move to San Francisco for a minute. So you gotta listen closely to this one. All right. Listen closely. There's no punchlines coming. There's nothing coming. I'm just going to read the tweet that came with the news story. Okay. And you got to figure out why this is Moscow time. It's a test. Right. We have a test this morning, Saturday morning tests. All right. So just keep it in your mind when I read it. Okay. There was a stabbing overnight on a BART train in Oakland that appears to have been unprovoked, but the incident is sure to add to the public perception that trains are unsafe. That's the headline. It appears to have been unprovoked, but the incident is sure to add to public perception that the trains are unsafe. Those damn people with their perceptions, right? But if that's not enough, right? So we've got Dean Preston here, who's a Blue Sky Social guy, right? He's got Blue Sky Social right in his X, whatever. His name's Dean Preston. He's the San Francisco District 5 supervisor. And here's his pronouns, everyone. Guess what? He, him. In case you were wondering, he is a he, him. A Democrat socialist, a tenant attorney, founder of Tenants Together. Sounds like a real nice guy, right? Sounds like a real nice guy. He's got some advice for you, right? He's got some advice for you. Because, people say they have a perception that the trains are dangerous when unprovoked people get stabbed, right? It's a perception problem. He's also got this perception problem that San Francisco gets, the cars get robbed too much and people just break into the cars and take what they want, right? So he's finished with that. He's got a plan, though. He's got a plan. This is going to save San Francisco, right? Just as the government in the 1980s launched a massive buckle up campaign, right, to retrain drivers and passengers to wear seatbelts. So it's like the seatbelt thing, right? We need a city to pound in every way possible this message to visitors. Do not leave anything in your car. Do this and we'll dramatically reduce car break-ins. I've got a better idea for Dean. Why don't you just drive all the cars into the ocean and then no one can do anything to the windows? What do you mean? Like we gotta figure out like what we can leave in the car. I don't know. Just say San Francisco, leave your car on the outside of the city. What's better, right? His plan here is that you can drive in, but then it's your problem, right? So it's gonna get fixed, but it's your problem. It's your mistake, right? You left shit in your car, you idiot, right? That's what they're going with. And I got one more, right? This one is another one of those ones that maybe, say we're in a Bitcoin standard, it's 4 to 5 years from now, and we're taking over the Smithsonian and we're taking out all the old fiat shit and replacing it with new, long time preference type of things, right? And the whole aesthetic is changing, right? There might be a wing for fake news. We've talked about it before. Which of the fake news stories you're going to hang in the Smithsonian, or maybe the Louvre might get changed. We don't know. One of the big museums, right? This one might actually be one that you'd want to really, have a special place for. So here it is. This is MSNBC, obviously, right? They are the grand genius. They are the greatest living Moscow time artists, I would say, right? And it's very difficult to compete with the skills. The Atlantic is good, but they just don't have the throughput. It's not the volume that MSNBC comes up with, okay? But here we go, right? So get ready for this one, right? And also, bad writing, let me just say bad writing. Anytime you hear the words, the fact that, right? This person was not trained as a writer. That is explicitly put in E.B. White's Strunken White's book about writing, which is probably the greatest book on writing skills and abilities. Strunken White, E.B. White, the writer of Charlotte's Web, and heavily cited by Stephen King's actual masterpiece, right? His actual masterpiece, Stephen King on Writing, where he talks about Strunken White very often in the book, saying, actually, you don't need to read my book so much. Strunken White is better. But, this is an addendum to Strunken White, basically. He has a few rules that you put in there about Strunken White. So Strunken White, beat in your head. If you have to say the words, the fact that, you should actually move to Canada and take a pill or a needle or however they do it. So the fact that, no good, right? But MSNBC maybe didn't read Strunken White. The fact that the Biden-era Justice Department is prosecuting a Democrat senator ahead of his re-election race doesn't do Republican conspiracy theorists any favors. So, if you guys didn't hear, Bob Menendez, who is the New Jersey senator, was caught with and by the way, obviously he's a Bitcoin hater. Obviously, this is a senator who went out of his way to say that El Salvador adopting Bitcoin as their national currency opened the floodgates to money laundering and crime. So this is who we're dealing with here, right? So it turns out they find this guy with like gold bars and all kinds of just explicitly corrupt stuff. So he actually has an investigation. It looks like they have the goods on him. It looks like the DOJ is actually going to get him. So the funny part of the MSNBC article is that, somehow it means that because they're being credible with Menendez or whatever his name is, that means that it must mean, or obviously they have an appetite to deal with Hunter and Joe and all these things. We'll see. We're going to talk about it. So this is what we know about the Menendez thing, right? The U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York held the news conference regarding an indictment of Senator Bob Menendez. By the way, Southern District of New York, always a court that a lot of political stuff happens in, by the way. So something I learned when I lived in New York and dealt with a lot of New York lawyers. I knew a lot of lawyers, and they had a lot of understanding about when you pick different courts, what it actually means and how credible things are. And as I understand, the Southern District, heavily politically influenced. I don't know exactly what it means because I did not really practice too much law when I lived in New York, but I knew that was, I've seen enough eye rolls when people mention the Southern District Court that, something about it. So the indictment alleges that between 2018 and 2020, Senator Menendez, who is chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, we're going to be talking about that more, and his wife, Nadine Menendez, engaged in a corrupt relationship with 3 business people. Senator Menendez and his wife allegedly accepted hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes in exchange for the senator using his influence to protect and enrich the business people and to benefit the government of Egypt, of all places. Egypt. So I guess Egyptians can buy off U.S. congressmen and senators too, right? Egyptians. Geez, I thought the cartels, at least it's credible, right? They have all the drugs and influence, but Egypt too, I guess. We'll see. Previously, the senator was also indicted in 2015 on roughly a dozen charges, including bribery and conspiracy, following accusations he accepted gifts from a donor in exchange for political favors. That case ended in a mistrial after jurors were unable to reach a verdict, right? So Canico goes on that he accepted cash, gold, home mortgage payments, jobs, cars, and other things of value in exchange for using his power and influence to protect and enrich businessmen and to the benefit of the government of Egypt. If you think this is bad, you should see the millions in cash, diamonds, luxury cars the Bidens received from their unregistered foreign lobbying with corrupt oligarchs in China, Russia, and Ukraine. That's Canico, the Substack. Canico Substack adding to it. Joshua Steinman says the following. I'm on page 8 of the Menendez indictment, he says, and it's already better than the last 2 Bond movies. Did you hear who the enemy is in the new Bond book, which will be a movie next? It's like MAGA people. They're going to go with that. Yeah. Real on brand for James Bond, right? So Egyptian intel sends. So here's the basic formula. It looks like, right? And I've been talking about honeypots for a long time. I've seen them. They're real. They're a problem. Egyptian intel sends honeypot to a U.S. senator, hooks in, starts making hundreds of millions of dollars a year in military assistance. Pardon me. Cash, gold, cars, boom. Allegedly, right? I've told folks here many times about my story in China in 2016. That was my often referenced trip that I took to China. And on that trip, spies absolutely everywhere. I mean, everywhere. Now, luckily, I had lived in South Korea and Japan for several years before I got even involved in Bitcoin. And that showed me a lot of what I needed to know just about how boys and girls, let's say, meet in Asia. It's not exactly the same as in America, right? You have to sort of train your eye to it, just like it's different in Europe and Africa. Every part of the world is a little bit different about how boys and girls meet. The result is kind of the same, right? But how they meet and interact and socialize is very different, right? Americans, of course, spend all of our time in public high schools learning exactly this, flirting and being with people of the opposite sex. It's not exactly the way it works over in Asia. Of course, they have segregated high schools for the most part, and let's say they don't really develop the same skills. So how it actually works became obvious to me. So when I saw how things were happening in this first Bitcoin meeting, this would have been 2016. It was really around the Ethereum event, but there was a lot of Bitcoiners in town, and the great schisms hadn't really set in yet. We still hadn't gone through the block size wars. The schisms were there. I know to this day, Samson Mao will not admit he was at, because I've said, yeah, remember we hung out at the ETH event, right? And he was like, I never went to that. And I was like, yes, you did. Yes, you did, right? But there was a changeover, let's say, of events. There was a bunch of events happening at once, and one could credibly say they were there to do Bitcoin stuff. And I've heard him admit many times that the hotel that the event was in Shanghai was his favorite hotel in the world, because it does have an amazing view. We got to enjoy every day there, this beautiful view of the city of Shanghai skyline, and having a good time on the rooftop of this hotel. But that's where these spies were, right? I mean, just everywhere. And usually these honeypots. And I would say to the guys, right? And the guys, you got, It's not what you think it is, right? Whatever you think is happening right now is not that. If you want the thing you think you're getting right now, come with me and we'll go somewhere else. It's not here, right? You're not getting it here. Whatever you think is happening here is not what you think it is, because this is not the way it normally goes down, right? This is not what it looks like to me. And so I actually probably saved a few people that night from getting in trouble. I definitely didn't save everyone, right? I saw, and I mean, things were crazy. There was like jets taking people from the party to middle of nowhere parts of China to say, we got money for you. And they'd come back funded, right? Who knows what happened? Absolutely no idea. So, but I was able to even out one of these spies, and he was like, yeah, we're all spies here. Yeah, sure. For sure. Which is where I had a really insightful conversation. The reason why I share the story all the time, this was a person who sort of laughed at me as someone who carries around a lot of American national psychological baggage, saying that basically Americans were at a disadvantage because patriotism was so bound to the US dollar, and that China didn't have that problem, and that China, although they had a trouble with their communist government, this spy was not that into the Chinese Communist Party. It was a job, right? He had a mission to do, and it was really just to incite men into honeypots. He was around there introducing guys to girls, right? That's how I met him. And so this fella, he straight up told me, right, that you Americans with your patriotism around the dollar is a problem. It's a problem for you, right? And I've been thinking about it for years, right? I've been thinking about that for years, right? So a stud like you can never be sure. Well, look, it's what I saw, right? It's what I saw. I think Austin, who was commenting, I'm not sure if you were on that trip, Austin. I know a lot of your friends were, and they were all fine. Not everyone got themselves into trouble, right? It was people who really were unaware of how some of this stuff works. So it wasn't everybody, but it was enough people. And I was out there telling them, hide right now, right? It's not going to work out the way you think. The point is, though, this honeypot thing, right? Just imagine, Hunter and all of this stuff. Was Hunter aware of what's going on with these things? Probably not, right? But what we know now from the amount of corruption and what was going on with Menendez, let's go into the foreign before I get to the point. Let's go into this foreign. This is from Mike Benz Cyber, who I've been talking about for days, right? This guy, Mike Benz Cyber. So remember what I just said about the honeypot and what went on, and I said, is Hunter prepared? Well, the reason I said that is because of what Mike Benz has underlined with the indictment of Menendez. He's brought up a very interesting overlap between the Biden crime family and the Menendez crime family. And this is what it is, right? So DC Drano, many other people have brought it up, and it's the following. Senator Menendez was allowed to remain chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee despite being under federal investigation for bribery for over a year, right? Making the comparison here to Russell Brand being demonetized on YouTube after a news article was published, right? But that's that two theory. Anytime you start seeing people try to use this unfairness thing, though, by the way, it ain't going to work, right? Like, oh, it's not fair. Conservatives are treated more unfairly. Bitcoiners are treated unfairly. No one gives a shit if you're treated unfairly. That's the point often, right? So if you bring it up, it's not persuasive. Now, I'm not saying you don't think about it, right? You don't think about fairness, but fairness isn't something that really pushes people to have a different opinion, right? You can't say, well, it's not fair to me, and then everyone changes their mind, right? You can't, it's just not going to work, right? So the idea of like Bitcoin being more fair doesn't always really click the way you think it will, right? So this is just a persuasion thing. But here's what we know. This is Mike Benz on Foreign Relations Committee, right? So talking about how Joe Biden, preceding Menendez, was the chair of this committee. So Joe Biden was the chair of the ranking member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee for 12 years before he was the vice president, where he ran much of the White House foreign policy as vice president. It was through this committee that he set up his deal empire. That position is the hot seat of selling out America's empire prizes for personal profits, right? So he was the ranking minority member in 1997 and chaired it from 2001 to 2003. And again, from 2007 to 2009, whereupon he became the vice president, right? So Mike brings up these types of things, right? Just talking about how this whole network of money works. And of course, don't forget that Bob Menendez was the one out there saying Trump is a Russian agent, right? Meanwhile, he's an agent of Egypt, right? Peter Zeihan brings in the point of view, though, that it wasn't just Republicans after Menendez. Obama knew it was a problem and actually tried to get him fired from the Senate years ago, right? So this is something that's been along for a while. So Zeihan mentions that here. And the Mike Benn stuff, right? Just underlining how this money works, how it proliferates, how this committee might be, indeed, as he says, the place to go in order to sell out America, and that it is the most lucrative position to make these kinds of deals because, of course, you get to go deal with foreign folks, right? But it's not just that, right? We've got more signs of just how corrupted this thing is, right? You've got the SBF family now saying that they regarded FTX as a family business, right? Now we found out yesterday that there were the people who bankrolled most of the NGOs that all acted unanimously in order to boycott and protest Elon Musk's acquisition of Twitter a year ago, right? So how do you get all kinds of NGOs to sing from the same songbook? Well, you pay them all from one source. You make a fake distribution of opinion by having a sole source of money. And it turns out it was the Soros money, right? So Soros money given over to SBF's parents, used in order to coerce and manipulate media, right, in order to hide whatever's going on, in order that we don't ever ask questions about. Now, I'm not saying Menendez is related to it at all. I have no proof whatsoever. But remember, one of the things that Bitcoin can bring to the world, and one of the things that I think it can bring to the world, and I keep arguing that it can bring to the world, and I keep expressing that it can contribute, is the following, right? So a lot of Bitcoiners think the answer to government surveillance is that Bitcoin becomes more private and it becomes a privacy enhancing or privacy focused system. That might work. It might, right? But it's not the only way to look at the tension between privacy and surveillance and these kinds of things. One of the things that I like about Bitcoin, forget about your personal privacy for a second. And the reason I say forget about your personal privacy for a second is because most people sell their personal privacy very easily and without much coercion and for nothing, like for a free donut, right? And I don't think that's going to change, right? It looks to me like people don't really give a shit. And I don't know how they're going to, right? They're not really afraid of it. They don't really want privacy. They kind of want things that are easier. And I'm myself, right? There's things that I sign up for shit on email all the time, right? I use FaceTime security or whatever that face security thing is on my iPhone, right? So now I'm not standing in line for WorldCoin because I don't want $20 from some stupid VC, right? So, but that's not because of the privacy. I'm not like, oh, my face will be in a database somewhere. I don't give a shit, right? It's already there. I cross borders. Guess what? Your face is in a database. That's not going away, right? And I don't think it's going away just because there's a couple of people who want control. I think it's not going away because most people won't want that or decide that or are afraid of that. Remember, it's not about rationality, right? Humans are a combination of just what we want and what we're afraid of. There is no I used logic and now I decided this is the best for me, right? No, it's I want this a lot and I'm afraid of this a lot, or I'm not afraid of this very much and I really want that. And that's how you make your decisions. You use rationalization after the fact. Whichever fear or desire is stronger given the subject is how you end up using your language model in order to make sense of your decision. But the decision was made before. It wasn't that your logic came there and you were able to filter through and decide what you want to do. We're all built this way, right? We're not, there's no exceptions. There's no like getting super smart and then suddenly you're a rational person. No, it's not, unfortunately not how it works. But here's the thing we can do, right? So forget about the privacy argument for a second. What Bitcoin allows us to do is reverse the stream, reverse the polarity of transparency, right? I don't really know if we're going to win the fight of government knowing about us, but the fight we must win, the fight that's more important than any of them, is knowing what they're doing, right? The transparency going the other way. That's what Bitcoin can do. It doesn't necessarily make your life more private unless you go to some Monero thing, and then you're into a whole bunch of other trouble, right? The truth is, Bitcoin can be used in order to just understand and follow the money for the government. Having the government operate with transparent money where we know what they're paying for, there is a feedback loop, is as valuable, maybe more valuable than our own privacy shielded from government oversight and supervision and whatever. Knowing what they're doing, right? Reversing this polarity. And I think that the polarity can be reversed in all levels. Once you are able to follow the money, I think even the legal threshold of innocent until proven guilty, which applies to citizens, will be reversed. That I think government agencies are going to have the reverse situation. They're going to be guilty until they prove their innocence. Why? Why should they get the presumption of innocence like a human being? Why does a corporate entity, which is what these executive branch government agencies are, or even the government representative, why do they get the same rights as a normal human being? They are the state. The point of the rights of being innocent until proven guilty is a bulwark against the power of the state. It's nothing else. But if you're the state, why do you get the presumption of innocence? No, no, you're guilty. All of these people in the future should be guilty until they're proven innocent. All accusations should begin a process of reflection and visibility into what's going on. If we can follow the money, we should be able to get to the bottom of things quick, so you won't have frivolous accusations. There should be a way to follow the money really quickly. So what I see as the main advantage of Bitcoin is not necessarily changing the formula of privacy vis-a-vis the government, the privacy of an individual vis-a-vis the government. It's the opposite. Now, I hope we can find some way to get privacy, but I don't necessarily see it in Bitcoin. I don't, right? Like Bitcoin, there's always ways you can use graph analysis. I don't buy Chainalysis and all these guys' actual effectiveness, but you can still do, you can still follow the money in Bitcoin, right? You can still follow the money in Bitcoin. It's possible. It's a public ledger, for God's sakes, right? And there are ways to be privacy preserving with it, which I think are a more equal footing that individuals have against the state for surveillance. They don't have to just fall into this easy FinTrack, FinCEN, FATF model where automatically there's a repository for all of your information based on transaction size and easily scrollable and searchable, right? So I don't think we're going to stay as in as invasive a situation. And Bitcoin definitely offers tools and tactics and techniques that you can fight against the surveillance. But I just want to put it in your head that there is another option. The option isn't just, our privacy and the government's supervisory role in the balance. I think you can actually reverse the stream, reverse the polarity, use Bitcoin to get transparency in the government, and that gets you to pretty much the same place, right? And especially if our mindset is about taking away and shifting both the burden of proof on their end, right? So again, they are guilty until proven innocent. I don't see why they should, any of them, Republicans, Democrats, any government agency should be guilty until proven innocent from now on. After what we've seen, I think that's probably just a better way to approach it going forward, right? They're not individuals. They do not have constitutional rights the way an individual person does. We need to start separating the idea of a legal construct person and a human being, right? Very important. So if we can do that, we'll have, I think, a better way of managing this stuff. And indeed, when you consider all of these things, right, you consider what's going on with the Bidens, our investigations into the Intel Committee, the Foreign Relations Committee, all of this stuff, right? You've even got the IRS now saying a third IRS official has said that the Biden Justice Department blocked Weiss from charging Hunter Biden. So more and more people coming out and saying that. But here's what I'm seeing when I see this stuff, and it comes from Professor St. Onge. I did the spaces with him yesterday, and he wrote a newsletter quoting something Ray Dalio said, right? Something Ray Dalio said. And it's this, right? He says, great disorder in the next 18 months. So if you guys don't know who Ray Dalio is, by the way, he's one of the largest wealth managers in the world, right? I think he's one of the richest Wall Street people going. I haven't met him before, but we did book him for a CoinDesk show that I was working on a couple years ago. So I've had a little bit of interaction. I've been after him for years and have been a huge fan of his writing and all that stuff. I see a blind spot in his case with China, but his videos on how the machine works, for example, and showing how the economic engine and money work and debt cycles. He checks out to me as someone pretty relatable and more or less trying to tell the truth. I don't detect pure truth coming from the guy. He definitely operates on a level of his own, some motivations that are his own and hidden from you. But I do see someone who is sort of on our side, if you will, right? On the side of Bitcoiners, on the side of changing the world order. And this is what he says from his great disorder in the next 18 months. Our leaders keep hiding and gaslighting, kicking the cans until they grow too big to bail out. At which point, like the Soviet Union in the 1990s, we undergo a wholesale replacement of our failed elite. That's the line I want to focus on. A wholesale replacement of our failed elite. We don't know what replaces them, but it's unlikely to look anything like today's sclerotic, and gutless elite, right? So he's talking about a wholesale change. And I think that's what most Bitcoiners are talking about too, right? We are talking for the most part about an entire replacement theory. That's our theme for the day, right? The other replacement theory. So you can go back to this border talk and you hear all these people, oh, it's a conspiracy. They want to replace. And I agree. It doesn't make any sense, right? When I look at what's going on, when you hear conservatives say, oh, it's replacement theory. They want to replace white people with these other people, right? I don't know. Only because if you were going to engineer that, you can't guarantee you're going to win, right? Like most of these people coming across the border, 99% of them, I think, are coming actually because their countries suck. They can't work. And they are more conservative, let's say, than naturally born Americans in some ways. Now, I agree there's a dangerous element coming in. There's only so many that can actually come before you start diminishing the quality of life of Americans. We might even be at the point, I don't know, right? I think in the long run, America is better off with all of these immigrants. I really do, right? I think you need labor, right? You need people to work, right? The rest of the world has a demographics problem. America still doesn't. Now, it's painful seeing the cities be so swamped and terrible, not fun to look at, but the people who voted to be sanctuary cities and have all this are getting exactly what they asked for. So it's hard to really go further than that. But what I mean is this replacement theory, to me, misses a bit of logic and forms almost a part of conservative, I guess you will, the way they can be manipulated, just like liberal people, right? You get afraid of something and then you go further. Now, like I said, I'm not wishing for masses of humanity to be living on the streets in America because maybe it'll be a good thing in 20 years. That's not exactly what I'm saying, right? What I'm saying is the idea that replacement theory explains why Democrats leave the border open doesn't quite hit. To me, it is money. It's corruption. That's the more likely thing, right? The more likely scenario is not, oh, we're going to change the demographics in America so we don't lose elections. They have another plan for not losing elections besides bringing in a bunch of people from the global south, right? There's other things you can do, right? You can do what Pennsylvania did. You're all automatically voting, right? You're going to receive 5 ballots. I got 5 ballots in the mail last time. I always, just to tell people what a big Joe Biden 2020 fan I was as a Bitcoiner who loved Donald Trump, I always say that I voted for Biden with all 5 of my ballots that I received in Brooklyn in 2020, right? That's how big of a supporter I was. That's how much I wanted to see a Biden 2020 win exactly as they got it, right? I was, all 5 ballots got. It's not true, but it's a fun fib, right? Watching people go, instead of arguing about the election, yeah, I voted him 5 times. Yeah, it's awesome. I got all 5 ballots, all of them in. There was not one American voting age person at my house, not one. And I got 5 ballots. There weren't even 5 people in my house. We were only 4. 2 Americans, but babies, children, they can't vote, right? So there you go. But and you can think of it like think of what's going on in the border today, right? You get the old remember the AOC crying at the border photo op. Well, it's worse today, right? Michael Schellenberger wrote today, Biden officials say the border crisis, and imagine this is how corrupted America has become, right? This is how untrustworthy and how much brainwashing is actually being thrown at Americans, right? Just think of the quagmire the media and the government and the justice system has put Americans in, right? Imagine the degree of brainwashing that has to have happened for Joe Biden to come out yesterday and blame the border crisis on Republicans from gutting the immigration system, which is what he did, right? So he comes in and says, "Oh, it's Trump's problem," right? And here's Schellenberger bringing up that Biden officials said the border crisis isn't the fault of the president, but it is. Biden spent 2018 and 2020 denouncing Trump's policy as cruel. The result is nearly 2 million immigrants per year entering the U.S., and the return of child labor and the cruel separation of children from parents. And he says, the border has fallen. America has fallen and it can't get up. Elon Musk mentions almost all legacy media, aka the DNC cheering squad, relentlessly attacked Trump as being heartless and cruel for wanting to secure the border, even for policies that were unchanged from the Obama administration, and those fake pictures of AOC. So if you think about what St. Omer said, the wholesale replacement, we see all of this corruption, right? We see the media's complicit nature in it. So the Washington Post, right? Did you guys see the headline of the Washington Post yesterday? Of course, they're supposed to have the 10 a.m. call with Dave Portnoy, right? That was the one where when he called them and jumped in, preempting their article, attacking his sponsors of his pizza event, and said, you guys are a bunch of scumbags. You didn't even call me. This is a hit piece. It's garbage. And you got to remember, one of the best things you can ever do for yourself is to know someone is lying and watch them lie and perceive them and perceive their tells and perceive the way they lie and just follow the lie, right? Once you see it once, they'll lie similarly again. And it's a huge advantage. Don't do this on someone you want to stay friends with, okay? So once you see it, you can't unsee it, right? You'll always know how that person lies. So be careful with this superpower because you can't unsee it. So he caught her lying. They say, "Oh, we're going to talk tomorrow at 10 a.m." Right? That was yesterday. Of course, she can't. She calls at 9:59 and says, "No, I can't." And then gives him a time to call her 1 minute before they publish the article, basically in the afternoon. He says, "Get fucking bent," right? So we get the article. Here's the hit piece, right? Pizzerias navigate backlash around Dave Portnoy's Pizza Festival. What backlash? Who was out there backlashing but the Washington Post? Nobody was out there saying, "Oh, that fucking Dave Portnoy again, doing a dumb pizza thing where he helps fucking small businesses. What a scumbag," right? What backlash was there for a pizza party and a media, single weird guy who goes around doing crazy shit and is mostly just entertaining and fun, betting on things and running his fun that salad hands and everyone thinks it's funny? And what evilness is coming out of this guy that requires backlash around his pizza event other than what these maniacs in the media are saying, right? So participating pizzerias have had to navigate buzz around the festival and the backlash against Barstool Sports founders' controversial remarks and allegations of sexual misconduct, right? Allegations of sexual misconduct again, right? So I've met Dave Portnoy before. You know what happens when you're around Dave Portnoy in a crowd of people? You ever walk through a crowd of people with Dave Portnoy? I have, right? You want to know what happens? A bunch of girls come around and want pictures, want to talk to him. Like, that's what happens, right? Girls do, not just guys, right? He's a very popular guy. He's a good-looking guy like Russell Brand, right? So again, I'm not going to defend rapists, right? But I can also defend against allegations of rape when, again, this is not the same as government, who should be guilty until proven innocent. These are human beings who are benefiting from that ancient law of innocent until proven guilty. So there is no court case against Dave Portnoy, just like there is none against Russell Brand. It's all allegations, right? All. So this is what Dave Portnoy says. He goes, "It's surreal that we live in a country where activist reporters can openly get caught lying and admitting they are creating a false narrative to generate engagement and controversy and still publish the article. So the article comes out, and of course it got community noted, right? Community notes. What did I say almost a year ago, right? Almost a year ago when I started this, and Elon bought X, and within 2 months we had the community notes thing. I said it was going to change the world, right? I said community notes was going to be the greatest innovation in news and media we had seen in a long time. You can go back and check the tapes, right? I said it before anyone had even seen it being deployed. I knew about it from Taiwan. I'd been paying attention to this algorithm from Taiwan, and was a big fan, right? So community notes comes in and talks about the phone call and how she was intentionally misleading and a big fucking liar, right? So Emily Heil, whoa, I didn't know that was her name, Heil. So Emily Heil, that's where we're at. So go back to what Ray Dalio said, right? The complete and total wholesale replacement of these leaders, and that's what I think we're talking about here. Where it's a wholesale replacement of the way the president operates, the way the executive branch operates. And I think the distaste Americans are growing in their mouth for these power structures are going to be acute, difficult to suppress. I don't think the power of the old-fashioned fake news media hiring Emily Heil out of the Washington Post is going to be enough to force this thing back. I think enough people are coming with complaints. I think, again, it's wants and fears. I think the fear of a runaway U.S. government and prosecutions of normal people, and soon fear of even being able to eat, is going to take over in the American mind, simply because this thing has been so mismanaged that the bill is absolutely coming due on the individual American, and they are not going to want to pay for Menendez and Biden and the Washington Post. And you get Obama here, right? So Obama comes out with a message yesterday, right, saying he has a message to young people for climate action. He says, I want you to stay angry. I want you to stay frustrated. I want to channel that anger. So Obama doing his best as the divider in chief of America again, right? Trudeau, people say Trudeau does this all the time. He does. Trudeau in Canada is an expert at this, right? Always complaining about who's fighting, even if no one else is complaining about it. And then suddenly we're fighting about it in Canada. Obama actually wrote the book on this thing, right? So everything Trudeau in Canada knows, he learned from Obama. And Mike Benz is saying here, right, that he's convinced these newly pumped up climate groups are going to be the ones that do the multi-city riots in the years ahead. Maybe. The other option is the riots are actually against the Clinton Foundation and people like this, right? Even talking today about the Clinton Foundation, you get Jesse Waters saying the Clinton Global Initiative announced their very own program to rebuild Ukraine. The U.S. is sending the World Bank $25 billion. Then the World Bank is sending the money to the Clintons, and then the Clintons are sending it to Ukraine, right? So remember what I said about the transparency going the other way, right? We don't have it at all, not even close. Let's get that before we even focus about individual privacy, which is much more complicated, right? Because it has to do with the psychological choices individuals make, which is not even the same as the way we set up our system, right? So this is what Jesse Waters goes on to say. Joe Biden has also appointed a Democrat mega donor to be Ukraine construction czar. This is the Spirit Cooking, whatever her name is. Her qualifications, she's a billionaire who bankrolled Obama's election. But you don't dare ask where our $100 billion of aid went, because the Ukrainian army's American trans disinformation czar says asking questions is treasonous, right? So what I see here is everything loaded to completely change how we interact with the government. I think we can get the burden of proof to be flipped, right? I think we can get them to be guilty until proven innocent. That's the replacement theory Bitcoiners are interested in, I would say. We are interested in keeping transparency going the other way, or making transparency go the other way, so that now we don't know anything. We don't know anything about the global initiative or what it's doing with Ukraine, and then the World Bank gets money, but it's actually American money, and then it goes to Ukraine, but through the Clinton initiative and all of these things, right? We don't know anything about that. And Mike Benz commenting that, saying, can you even imagine the World Bank laundering an operation through a nominal Trump nonprofit? That's what we have here, right? The World Bank is the epicenter of confessions of an economic hitman-style clandestine op-debt diplomacy. Pretty good sentence, right? The World Bank is the epicenter of confessions of an economic hitman-style clandestine op-debt diplomacy. That it's run through the Clintons still says everything, right? That it's run through the Clintons still. Clintons haven't been an influence in since she ran in 2016. I mean, who gives a shit about what the Clintons say anymore, right? Well, if you're money laundering through the World Bank, you do, right? So there you go. We got transparency that can head the other way. We've got, we're not going to buy the media capacity to lie and gaslight and do all these things is diminishing every minute, right? Every minute it's becoming more and more laughable. The alien things didn't work. It won't work again, right? They can bring out all the papier-mâché aliens they have, and no one's going to buy it. It's not going to be, that dog ain't going to hunt. We're not going to follow it. So there you go. Let me see what the comments say. Happy autumn equinox. I celebrated it 2 days ago accidentally. I told the kids to say goodbye to summer at the wrong date because I live exactly on the 45th parallel, by the way. Like exactly. The exact border of Canada and the United States where I live is the halfway point between the equator and the North Pole. So we get the beautiful, the equinox is like calibrated to this address, calibrated to my house. I love that. I love it. All right, there we go. Yeah, we get the moon changing and the sun changing and all the good stuff, right? All that good stuff. Put them in a timeout. We can't. Ray Dalio is a sharp mind, great author, interesting perspective on economic behavior and strategy. I'm a fan. Well, this is the best. No, what I love, Felipe. So I went out because I'm a Quebec separatist sovereignist myself, right? And I went out with some of my old law school sovereignist friend this weekend, who's kind of like down on it ever happening, right? He's like, it's never going to happen. I'm like, no, man. It's not because Quebec's getting anything done. It's because Canada is so stupid. It's not going to be successful. It's going to fail. And so he goes, I don't know. We'll see. But he said, I'm really happy to see you, speaking positively. He says, when we went to law school together 10 years ago, or more than that now, he was as optimistic as I am now. And then so right away this week, because if you guys didn't catch it, there was, I guess, an assassination in Canada, Indian stuff, whatever. I don't know anything about it, really. I don't care. So in the end, Trudeau tried to blame Canada for it. Right. I tried to blame India for it. So now everyone in India, I don't know if you guys saw this, but India is a big country. So it's trending on Twitter. It's all these India media people saying, oh, Quebec wants to separate, and they're trying to push them now to separate. So they're getting this big media boost. So I showed it to my friend this week. He's like, oh my God, right? Just as you said it, all these Indian people calling Canada a scam, that Quebec should separate, and sort of fluffing up the amount of conversation there is. Imagine if the Quebecers get the billion Indian people online promoting their own separation. It could get pretty beautiful pretty quickly. And this stuff's like going viral. And it's all like that really frank Indian journalistic language, it's all like, Canada brutally occupying Quebec for 100 years. Yeah, did I see he's in? No, I honestly, I can't listen to Trudeau, man. I can't do it. I try to avoid. Like, I don't even care if it's one of these stories where he looks bad. I just avoid, because if he looks bad, he's gonna do he'll talk, and if he talks, I can't be around. Like, I can't listen to him talk, especially in French, right? Now, I predicted he would be the Prime Minister of Canada, but I made one extra prediction, right? I made an extra prediction. This would have been in 2014. I said he's going to win, but he's also going to be such a failure as Prime Minister that he can take down the entire Western liberal ideology. I said he could take the whole thing down. He's such a failure and is so rock bottom stupid. Now he's got talents. I don't want to take his talents away, right? So I don't make it sound like I'm underestimating him. I'm not. But what I did believe is that his stupidity would result, or his lack of self-awareness. It's not stupidity. I think he's got horsepower. So stupidity is the wrong word. I think his lack of self-awareness, his lack of feedback, his utterly fiat mind would lead him into an absolute quagmire, and he would be destroyed. Yeah, maybe I have. No, exactly. I don't want to make it sound like I've got TDS, Trudeau derangement syndrome. It's not that. It's more, I know the end of the story, or at least I've believed the end of the story from the beginning, which is that he will be the reason. He'll be the psychological stand-in for why Western liberalism failed. He'll be the proxy through which we understand the failure of all of it. And because of that, right? Because he would be the proxy through which we understood all of it. I've more or less just been waiting for that. So everything that's between him being elected and him causing a crash of all liberal thought in the world, including the destruction of everything that came from universities, everything, right? Well, no one should have a talent to run a country, I think, P-Man, right? I don't think that's a thing. I think that was a thing in the old days, but I don't think it will do. He's like a Newsom. Yeah, he's like a Down. Now, I love Down syndrome people, so we don't want to use them in a punchline. But he is a mentally handicapped version of Gavin Newsom. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. He's a shadow of Obama and a shadow of these other folks. Now, it looks like, look, I don't think Newsom is that smart either. Newsom making tons of mistakes. He goes and signs, so that everyone talking about Newsom being parachuted in after the convention so that there isn't a thing, so they can really screw RFK over, which is probably what's going to happen. So he just signed a veto on the parent choice thing in California. So if the parents disagree with the gender that a school sees inside of their pupils, that's not going to happen anymore, right? Everyone was saying, wow, California managed to come together across party lines. Democrats and Republicans say parents should probably know and be the ones who decide the gender of the child up until a certain age, right? No, Gavin says, no, that's silly. Come on, fucking racists or something, bigots, or he had some insults for that explained why he signed the letter. And you've got Cernovich today, who says this is all part of his campaign, right? That he's preparing the deck basically to jump in. Where that is right now, this is where I think we're at with that whole file. It looks like the summer was spent trying to convince, now I'm just guessing, right? But it looks like the summer was spent trying to convince Biden to retire. And it looks like Biden said no way. And so it looks like now the language I've seen from Newsom, it looks like they're in a form of compromise situation where Newsom is going to be, so by the way, if you didn't notice, Newsom is going to be the person who counters the Republican debates. So he'll get time on screen every time there's a Republican debate. He'll be the person who said this person was stupid and that person made a mistake and they're so awful and blah, blah, blah. So he's going to do that. And now he gets into the news for these things. We saw yesterday that he was in the news as well for saying that his children or his son was listening to micro cults. Imagine calling Joe Rogan a micro cult or Andrew Tate a micro cult. Scott Adams had the best reply to that. He goes, how much do you want to bet Gavin Newsom's son's room is clean? So they're trying to make it a bad thing, but basically the way to handle it is, does your son have a clean room or not, right? Does he clean his room? Who knows, but maybe. So, but a good way to handle it. So you've got this, and then I guess, so Gavin's got that. He's going to stay in the news, vetoed the bill for the kids and the stuff. So we'll see. We'll see. I think they are going to try, but Gavin is from the old world. I don't imagine, without a 100% working brainwashing machine, I don't know if he can do it. I mean, his face, he looks like a Batman villain, right? Like for real, he looks like a Batman villain. He looks like a villain. I mean, he doesn't look like a president. He looks like a villain. Maybe I've got a derangement syndrome or a bias or something. I don't know. All I see is villain. And looks are important, guys. I hate to say it. Looks are important. So in his case, I don't think it's going to work. Tommy saying he called fucktard and just Trudeau's face. Addition of 1 million. Anyone wants some? They free. Yeah, I'll take one. Hit me up. I'll take some of that. Gavin Newsom space drop with extra weight strapped to him so he reaches terminal velocity faster. The Republicans are not much better, but the Democrats all seem like that kid in class who told on you to the teacher. Yeah, Brian, that's the case. That's why it's Bitcoin, man. We're not going to get saved by Republicans. They're hunted more than anyone. So they're not in a position to help us. Now, I'd say more of them are suspicious of the fiat system, but until they understand that we've got to have a wholesale replacement of leadership and a change of current when it comes to privacy and transparency and burden of proof, right, and guilt and assumption of guilt, all of that is going to change. I predicted a completely new, almost a new constitution, right? We'll see. All right, team. That's what I got. Did I miss anything? Is there any other story out there that I missed that's interesting? If not, I shall see you all Monday. I will not be coming live tomorrow. I'll be here on the farm with the kids, hanging out. We're going to go do something in the morning, and we're going to live our life. Ciao, Jevy. Yeah, I hope you caught the sunrise pick today, Jevy. Jevy's one of the original cool from our show. Almost a year now, Jevy. You were there on day one, September 28th. So we're about a week away from day one of season 2. It's always been the same thing. Promises before then. Yeah. There you go, team. There you go. Daniel says, I love the transparency versus privacy take. I've said that for years. Great. Yeah, we shall celebrate. Yeah. I took a sunrise picture for you all this morning, Justin. If you haven't seen our Jeffy, if you haven't seen it on X. All right, kids are coming out. Peace. See you all Monday, team.